whether recording or not.
Yeah, no. Oh,
Okay, welcome everybody out to the planning commission meeting for December 20th, 2017. First item on the agenda is public comment concerning any issue not on the agenda. Do we have any tonight?
I'll have one public.
Crowded.
It's crowded.
Would you like to go first or last?
Yeah, no public comment at this time.
All right. Any commission members have anything? Okay. Move on to item number 2, continued discussion on the deck regulation recommendation. Gary handed out a little paper of some regulations here in
Did you
the
get a
valley.
copy of that, Gary?
Here in the valley. Has anybody had a chance to review that? Have any input on that? Any thoughts on deck regulation?
Why do we need it? Why do we think we need it? you
Because
only-
decks are turning into homes.
Oh, all right.
People are putting up decks to extend the roof line and have walls and windows and electrical. And so if we're going to have building codes, we have to include decks so that we can exclude things that are really decks. Does that make sense?
Well said, well
I
said.
think so.
There's
I think a deck doesn't have walls. but-
Why
Right,
Okay.
right.
Why couldn't you go the route to where you treat a deck to where it does need to be permitted, period, if you go to build a deck?
Well, because we talked about that last week just a little bit, because a deck, we want to identify a deck as something that you can at least put a chair on and a table and sit on. Because if I cobble together a 4x8 for my dogs, technically it's a deck, but I don't really need a permit for it. See what I'm saying?
Mhm.
It's not off the ground, it's not gonna fall down and kill people, so if we define a deck that requires a permit as something that's an actual structure involving safety of people and that sort of thing, then that deck would need a permit. So I think by size and height and access and attaching to the home, I think that's a great definition. Because then you're excluding things like, all right, I just want someplace to get out of the mud when I get out of my horse trailer.
So in other words, if someone goes to build a deck and they call up the engineer and they say, do we need to permit this? Then that right there is where he gets his answer, because we've got it all
Right.
set up.
Right, because we can say, is it this big, is it that big, is it, how far off the ground is it? Because if, the neighbor with a 2-story house wants to put on a deck, and it's 20 feet in the air, and he wants to put it up there on, toothpick 4x4s, then somebody at least needs to be able to say, that needs to be engineered. I think, if you're gonna have building code at all. If you're not, then you've got, an add-on is 2 single wides with duct tape.
Well, I just had a concerned citizen that had put a deck on, and he came to me and he says, I'd like you to tell me why building a deck can cost $1,100 in permits. And I think what happens there is you get in this cost-plus situation. He's building a deck, then he gets a stop order, then he goes ahead with it, then he gets another stop order.
We're talking about the deck that has
And-
walls and windows and.
And then you have everybody getting involved with engineering to where you're trying to fasten the home, the roof, et cetera, et cetera. And the next thing you know, you've got a deck that's permitted for $1,100, and the deck might only cost $3 to build. We had the same thing going on, I don't know who this is, I just didn't leave names out, but they went to build a carport. And by the time they were through, they had $800 worth of permits. And so I'm wondering if it just wouldn't be easier to say you have to permit it. They come in and they pay $30, and then you tell them they don't need a permit.
So an application fee
I don't
and
know.
then determine,
All I know is if you go the other route on such a small project, the cost plus can get to be so high because nobody has any direction, they're not quite sure where they're going.
I don't think I disagree. But when the code says that we have to permit it, and the permitting process says we have to run it through code review and structural review and go through that process, that's where those fees, you know, for better or worse, we spend those, you know, that's what it costs to go through that process. I think with the decks, I agree, if somebody's gonna pour a 4x8 chunk of concrete by their door so that they don't get muddy, I don't really have any structural safety concerns. If somebody's gonna build a 1,000 square foot deck 30 feet in the air, we probably ought to be looking at it, and it might cost $1,000 to do the engineering review and inspections on that. And both of those, I think, I know Eric and I struggled with both of them, because we don't like charging the residents money just because. But on that carport, we gave them a lot of other options of other ways to do it, and said, look, if it's attached to the house, right now the code says we have to do all these things. And that was their direction after working with them on all the other ways they could do it. That was what they wanted to do. On some of the decks, right now we don't permit decks, but then, as was brought up earlier, all of a sudden the deck has a roof, and then the deck has a wall, and then the deck has electrical and plumbing, and then, well, at some point that wasn't a deck, that was an addition. And then we go back and try to permit it after the fact, and anything you permit after it started and you do the stop work order, the cost plus is gonna be a lot more expensive. It's a lot better to get the permit, do it right the first time, for sure.
Well, I definitely don't want to see the town lose any money over this. I mean, that's, we're talking about the permits and how to handle them in a lot of different ways, because it was costing the town money. And so we rearranged that and made it happen. What is the average home when it comes to permits? What do you pay? 2,000, 2,500?
I would say the building fees alone, because it's usually in there, it's very, you know, we have the impact fees and a lot of other things in there, for some very big checks. But I would say we're the 3,000 would be about average. And that's hard to say, because we get some really big homes, it's a lot higher, and we get some small homes a lot lower, but that 3,000 range is not too far off.
Well, I think that explanation helps, you know, me personally on how do you justify $1,100 for permit on the deck. If all of a sudden you've got 5 or 6 trips out there and it's been a work in progress instead of planned right from the start, then I can see where these costs would drive up. Okay, so we need to define decks.
Yeah, what's it?
And that's
what is it?
Gary's piece of paper there.
This one.
Yeah, you've got it. Pam's got a copy. Everybody should have a copy. Not everybody printed.
I do have a question though.
Okay.
On these decks, when we went to put the deck on my new home, the homeowner's insurance got involved. So we're putting out a deck guideline, you know, sorry, my words are failing tonight. Policies, so to speak, of what decks can and can't be.
No, we're
Call it a
saying
definition.
what one that would be permitted would
Yeah.
be versus one that's not.
Okay,
And permitted does not mean allowed. It means needs a permit.
needs a permit. So we're allowing decks, but certain sizes need permits.
Well, that's what we have to
That's
define,
what we have to
size,
define.
structure,
And
something.
homeowners insurances also do the same thing. I had to do this, this, and this, or they weren't gonna insure my home because of the deck and this instability, or the height, or the lack of railing, or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So maybe our policies should be our, you know, our, for permitting of, didn't you tell me once that it had to be so big, had to cost more money?
Didn't have to cost, it's over a square footage size on an addition.
And
or
then we
not an
permit it.
addition, on an accessory structure.
On the deck.
But on a deck, we haven't made that definition. Well, because we've had them, a freestanding deck that sits on the ground, there's really no liability. If you get it up off the ground, suddenly you need rails, suddenly you need, anything that we permit, we have a liability on.
We
So,
do.
so once we go ag building, we don't review those plans. We don't have a liability, we never reviewed it. As soon as we review those plans, then we assume, I don't know how much liability, but some.
So same thing with the deck. So
Yes.
we do, somebody builds a deck that should have been permitted according to our town bylaws, and it wasn't. then we're not liable, correct?
Well, where we get the liability is if we did review it and then something fell on it, we didn't catch that.
So where does the homeowner's insurance come in?
Well, that's up, yeah, the deck in question that we're talking about was engineered. So the $1,100 deck was engineered. That was drawn and engineered from an engineer in town. We run that through our engineering to make sure all the calculations, everything's in line.
So we're doing our town bylaws for decks off of one incident that we've had going on?
No, well, no, but that did bring it to light. At what point do we want to permit these?
That brought to light that we need a definition for a deck, because, I mean, I think we all understand that if you put 2x6s this way and you put 2x6s on top and it's a few feet off the ground, that's a deck. But then when you put a wall down one side, is it still a deck? Put a roof over it, is it still a deck? When does a deck become a porch? When does a deck, how big does it have to get? When is a deck no longer
What is
just a
balcony?
deck?
What she said, and I'm sorry, you'll have to forgive me, I have forgotten your name. Don't say a
My
thing.
name?
Yes, ma'am. I know.
Can you ride home tonight?
Merry Christmas.
Welcome to my life.
Jay Binkard.
Thank you. What Jay said at the beginning, I think, was a very good definition of a deck.
Well, I think Gary's done a good job. He's done some homework there. I'm thinking that he's got a lot of this criteria from different towns or counties or municipalities. But
There you go.
I think that's a wonderful start right here. Is it a finish? I don't know. All of these you have to refine eventually, don't you?
Yep. Constantly, forever. Louder, Jay.
Tom and I were just discussing the fact that sometimes we don't really like regulation,
Absolutely.
so,
It just gets so sticky.
It does.
yeah.
It turns into a great big ball of wax.
Yeah, so what I like about code, the way Gary has written it, is if my deck is outside that code, then it's nobody's business but my own. Rather than there always being that, well, that deck might need this, be like, no, this is the code. My deck is not 200 square feet, it's 198. And so it's my business.
That's right.
It's not, it's not 30 inches above grade at that point, it's 25. And so it's my business.
And the town's off the hook.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Town's off the hook, I'm off the hook, nobody cares.
Yep. That's what we need.
And
But if I
Gary's-
build a porch instead of a deck, then,
Yeah, and so the problem has come when people call and say, do I need a permit for a deck? By our code, no, you don't. And a week later, I drive by and there's these trusses going up, and they've added a whole nother wing to their house, and they've got walls on the deck, and sure enough, it's a deck. And I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure we wanted to look at that before we let that happen as the town building department. That's something we should have looked at. And so what is, and so, more than
So
30
basically
inches,
refer
and
to it.
more than 200 square feet, more than 30 inches, doesn't have a roof, doesn't have walls, something that I can say, yes, you can build a deck without a permit,
Exactly.
but here's the box you have to stay in once you go
This
outside
is
that
a-
box.
Right.
And I'm really not trying to make life harder, right?
No.
I happen to agree with I like to be able to do whatever I want to do, and
Mm-hmm.
you stay out of my business, I stay out of yours, I like that theory. But there are decks that are, like I said, 20-something feet in the air that we need to make sure those are engineered and built right. That's our job.
And then when you spend this hour on the phone explaining to this person the rules for a deck, and if you're in question, tell me a little more about your plans, and this goes on, and all of a sudden, the town has a $120 bill from you guys,
Yes.
and we have nothing that's really, I mean, how do you ever take that particular customer and get your money back?
Some you don't.
But if
Yeah.
you've got it in writing, he doesn't have to spend an hour with them on the phone, he can refer them to the code, and if they have a question, they can call the planning.
Or you can email them a copy of it. It's only one page.
Exactly.
To your point, most of these don't take, most of those phone calls don't take an hour, but to explain what here's the code. Stay in the box, you won't hear from me, go out of the box, you'll hear
Your
from
neighbors are
somebody.
gonna call.
Doesn't usually take an hour, and so we don't the bills don't get that big that quick very often. But your bigger question, what do we do when somebody calls and takes our time, you know, a substantial portion, 15 minutes, half an hour, asking questions? Because we get those a lot with people that are looking to buy property. Hey, I've got a property, it's 9.5 acres, can I turn that into 2 5-acre lots? I don't know, can you divide 9.5 and get 2 5s? Well, that conversation takes half an hour. Turns out they choose not to buy the property. Who do we bill? You know, that never becomes a lot split. And some of that that's what that general planning permitting that we bill every month is those general calls that don't necessarily turn into anything.
Ryan, what about when somebody comes, and instead of calling it a deck, it's a porch? A porch automatically has to have a permit, doesn't it?
Right now, we've been told, right now, the code is we don't permit decks. And so if somebody came and says it has a roof line, you know, I call that an addition. If we're modifying the addition, I've told them that they're modifying the roof line, then I've said that's an addition, and it's on their primary house. I've said that's an addition.
So you wouldn't call it a porch, you call it an addition.
So I've said if we're modifying the structure of the house, it's an addition. And I want structural to look at it because I think as the building department, we have a liability for, I mean, if our code says you can build whatever you want, we're never gonna inspect it, we have liability there too.
See, what I'm seeing is that in the future, people are gonna change semantics on it,
Yeah.
get around it and say, oh, I don't fit in any of those boxes, it's not a deck at all, it's a porch.
Right. Well, but that's where I think this definition, a deck is an elevated structure, you know, more than 30 inches off the ground, more than 200 square feet, 100 square feet, I don't know what the numbers are, but that's a deck. And so you can call it whatever you want. According to our definition, it's a deck.
And if it's stuck on your house, then it's a porch.
And, you
Or
know,
whatever you want to call it, then it's an addition.
and modifications to the roof line and walls are additions. If you add a wall to your house that has a footing, that's an addition.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened. We had some people cover them. We thought, well, it's not a big deal. Then we had a wall go over. Well, suddenly that's a big deal.
What's the case if instead of a roof, they have simply an awning covering it? I mean, there's all sorts of little wormholes here that could be.
There absolutely are, and I think there always will be. I guess I'm looking at it more as a safety issue, because to the point, you know,
No, I get that,
our
I'm just
job is to
saying,
enforce the codes. And,
a lot of people do try to,
yeah.
I don't know how, you know, the correct way to say this, but a lot of people do try to take the approach where they
Oh,
circumvent, I guess.
They'll
is-
spend a lot of money to not get a really cheap permit. Yes, I
Don't we all?
understand. And I guess I think the definition we come up with needs to be based around safety. And to me, when we're putting up trusses and we have something that weighs thousands of pounds over people's head, I would like, you know, maybe we don't require it to be reviewed to save money, but we require them to submit stamped drawings so that at least somebody's looked at it and at least one engineer said it's okay.
I'm thinking specifically of a house down in the neighborhood where I've owned property where there was an existing awning and he came out back with some redwood strips and it was on the ground and, you know, then he called it a porch
Yeah.
because it has an awning over it. Well, a canvas awning is a whole lot less dangerous than trusses and
Yes.
shingles and all of that, but I mean, technically it's the same thing.
I don't disagree. And I'm not pretending I have the answer for exactly how your code should be.
Yeah. no,
There it is.
no, I
I'm
read
a little confused where it says, decks which are supported by the dwelling are required to be permitted when any of the following apply. Supported by the dwelling, that's confusing to me.
Attached to the dwelling?
Oh, yeah, attached.
Is it cantilevered out?
Because it's really not supported, but it is
Well, some of those
attached.
decks that they put on, they're, you know, as cantilever, that's a good word for it. So they're attached to the house, they're not freestanding.
If that wording was attached, I think that'd help it.
Well, not necessarily, but it could be on the ground level and attached to the building, but not supported by it.
Yeah, but the ground,
Yeah.
That's the one in the neighborhood that I came from he came out with redwood strips and put redwood across it. but it did attach to the back of the property, back of the house. But it was
Yeah,
not
like this-
supported by it, it had its own beams right on the dirt.
Okay, so let's clarify something. My deck is not it goes to the house, it's not attached by the house, it's not supported by the house because it has cement
Some-
piles, cement poles holding it up. But it is butted right up against the house and it is nailed to the house.
Yeah, that's
So
attached
does
to
that
it.
mean it's attached, but
Yep.
it's not supported by the house?
That's
Does that mean
correct.
it's supported by the house? So would that be supported by the house, even though it has the,
Well, hey, that's the engineer.
I am.
Personally, I'd rather we use the word attached. I think it would make my life easier.
Okay,
I think I would have to argue that if you put nails through the deck into your house, that you are using the house for some form of support.
support, okay.
It is attached.
So it would be attached.
The nail would be
It's
attaching
attached.
it,
It's-
would make it attached. I suppose you could build one with a 1-inch gap and then it would be not attached. But then I would argue we have code that says structures have to be 10 feet apart, so it's either attached or it's 10 feet apart.
Okay.
So
So
if you put the nail in, then
then
it
the
would be
word
attached.
is, the word we should be using is attached.
I would,
Not supported by, but attached.
I think attached would be easier for me.
To define.
But
Also in this, it talks a lot about stairs, 4 or more risers. Are all stairs, do they all conform to 8 inches?
a stair that we inspect does, the stair that's on
Okay,
an
so-
approved set of plans, but
So instead of using stairs here, or risers, we should say over 32 inches.
I would say 30 inches because that's when
30?
railings and some other, that's where the international code starts to require additional fall.
Isn't it 24? Anything over 24 has to have railing.
I thought it was 30, but okay, how about 24? 'Cause I
No, we
know,
should look up what's required, not just me.
Well, three
well,
steps.
they've come out with a new
on the
code and
deck.
they've
Is
changed
that
a lot of
okay?
things, so it's possible that we're both right.
To get to a house, generally speaking, though, you've got to have 4 steps.
Yeah.
Because your foundation's usually out of the ground a good 30 inches.
Absolutely, it's yours.
All I'm saying, are we better off to have terminology that states inches or risers?
I would rather have it be inches, because I can go out with a tape measure and measure inches a lot faster than I
Okay.
can tell you, well, yes, it's 4 steps, but they're 14-inch stairs.
So, in lieu of 4 risers, we would say 30 inches?
I would say, let's look up the latest code, and say whatever, the code that
Right,
requires,
whatever it is.
whatever the distance, whatever the International Building Code requires to have a railing would be the number that we should use, 24, 30, 32, whatever that number is. And I think you're right, let's look up the latest code and use that number. And I suspect he's right that it changed though.
Both on more brittle, they break at 24 inches where they used to be able to fall by 8.
Deck surface is over 30 inches above grade at any point along deck edge.
So you build it out over your head.
I kind of think that's a good place to start right there. And refine it as we go, as the problems come in.
So do we need a motion on that? Are you ready for a motion? Do you have input? Let me make a motion and then there can be input.
You said no.
Either way, whatever you want to do.
I was just reading in Google on decks, it doesn't say anything about it being attached to a house or attached in any way.
I make a motion we continue and give Ryan time enough to look at the code on the, and the steps.
I need to look at the latest code and see if they've changed the 32 to 30 or 24, because I can believe they changed it, they changed a lot of things. I just, tonight, I'm not prepared to tell you what the number is.
I know,
Okay, so we have a motion to continue, is there a second?
I know, but it's already said.
Yes, I'll
30
second it.
inches, so that's.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, more discussion on the motion?
Just the discussion is that we could each bring, maybe do a little more research on our own, as well as Ryan get the numbers, the
Yeah,
magic
I can
numbers.
find that
And
number.
then we can put it together a little bit better with more information.
So we're basically continuing it to the next
Well, we
agenda.
haven't, maybe,
Maybe we'll
It's just a motion.
just a motion.
That's the motion to continue.
Okay,
So we have a second, any more discussion? Call for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Dex is continued to our next meeting in January. Okay, 825 definitions, number 3 on the agenda. The town council took our recommendation, made some changes on that, and then sent it back to us in its final form, and they want definitions for what, in 825, what the definition is. If it says a combination, they want the definition of a combination.
What now?
Combination, like truck and trailer combination.
Oh.
We're doing definitions, they wanna know what the
I thought we put a
definitions are.
definition in there.
It was,
we did.
it was in there.
It was in there. We did a definition for a combination, and then we changed it.
It's a tractor trailer. Isn't that a combination? Tractor trailer.
The last one that I read said tractor, a trailer, and a pup is a combination. So you have a tractor with 2 trailers.
Or
And
one or 2 trailers. It's still a combination. of
that's
one
correct,
trailer.
that's correct.
I don't know if we want 94 feet running around somebody's house.
81?
See why we
There
need
you go.
definition?
I think the
No
definition's
combinations
fine
to
because
exceed
tractor trailer.
state law.
So, did everybody have a chance to review that?
Sorry, I did not.
Did it go out on emails, everybody get it?
I didn't get an updated version. I got the minutes, but I didn't get an updated version.
Carrie emailed this one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I've only got 5 copies.
It's-
I'm good.
I got five copies.
Okay.
Kinda share.
I don't really care.
This is the one you sent out,
That's
isn't
the
it?
one on the highway.
You sent 3 that's yes. I got the agenda, I got the minutes.
Okay, so you got the front and back there.
Oh, I did.
Did you only have that?
I almost asked email for curiosity purposes, but I would have thought some of those would have.
This is amendment A to that.
With the maps on the trailers.
You too, Sharon? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's amendment
That's on
A.
the, like a legal.
And I printed on the back too, so
I guess that makes sense, that it's, you know, passing them.
You have another one, Eric?
Go wander now.
let me go, this is the back page.
So you've got different sections on here, 06, and this is at 07.
This is the one that
The
we're.
first one I gave you was
Oh, yeah, amendment.
825. The very first one was 825. So this is the home occupation that we went to, the amendment A is the business.
Okay, and
I don't
this
even remember
change
what it is, like
sections on that one.
65 feet.
Yeah, I think 65.
Okay, section.
Okay,
I've got a combination,
See it?
for 11 and 3
Okay.
quarters, as long as
This
it's.
is page 2.
This one is?
Well, home occupation office and.
Books that's on the trailer, what it's supposed to, it's too long, but I can suck it up and get that
This
inch
one
in there.
Oh, I
is-
see what you're saying, yeah.
And so I gotta suck the
So
boat
we
up,
have-
and then afterwards
This
it's
is-
blocked.
So we have home occupation.
This is-
Then we have amendment A is the business.
It's all
Okay.
legal.
So,
This is
yeah,
home
they-
occupation.
so it just printed right in
It's
line.
funny, it's like, so I
I
didn't
just
have
wanted to ask
to.
that.
Right, so it's like
First
this.
question.
You can buy it inside.
Yeah, but when you have one, then they people do.
I've been here, that's it.
You guys gonna share one over here?
Here,
Okay,
combination.
so this is the home occupation, the first one we did.
So we have
This one will be
to-
amendment
It
A,
is
so
home
this is on the back
occupation,
too.
should not belong in.
So this is the first one we did, and then
So
this is the amendment A
this
for the
is this in
businesses.
here.
And then that's the back of
825,
Well,
that.
what we
contains the
Okay.
definition of the tract, what a combination is.
Okay,
I guess.
It's
for
in there
the
already,
tractor
Eric.
trailer
There it is. Reference 82512
It's
M
not the same one.
Tractor and trailer where they're attached.
as a definition of combination.
okay.
You wanna know definition of a tractor and trailer, correct?
No, they want a definition of combination.
Want a definition of the entire code.
Oh, look.
Where was it again, Jeff?
M, it's on the back page.
82512, this is federal
I
requirement.
think the easiest way to do this is read it. If it doesn't make sense, we gotta define it.
Okay.
Okay? Somebody wanna start off? Tim, you wanna start off?
Yeah, I think it's defined, tractor trailer. I
We're
don't
gonna
think it ought to have a pup
Want
on
to
it.
start at 82507? Where do
do
you
you,
start?
do you wanna start at 07 or do you wanna do the first one? Do you wanna do amendment A or,
Well, let's go to the first one.
okay, home occupation, 82501, the purpose? Do you wanna start that off again?
The purpose of this section is to detail the regulations of home occupation. Any home occupation shall not change the character of the home, the neighborhood, and will coexist with residential uses without significant conflict with the neighboring residential uses. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody understand that? We don't need a definition there?
We're good.
We understand it, we've been reading it for a year.
Okay.
What was it the council wanted us to?
They want you to go through and make definitions.
If there's definitions needed.
If there's a definition that if something doesn't make sense, then we have to define that.
Okay.
Because otherwise I have to go out there and try and define it, or Ryan, or Kimberly.
Okay,
Somebody's making the definition if we don't have a definition.
Okay, Kim, are you gonna keep reading?
No.
For the next
Should we all read it individually and then highlight our problems and discuss them?
Whatever you want to do, I thought we'd just go through and if something didn't make sense, we'd get right on it.
Jay, you go ahead and read that.
Okay, I'll read 82502.
Okay.
Approval period. A home occupation license is valid for 1 year, I don't think we need to define that, and can be renewed annually. What does that mean? It's valid for 1 year, can be renewed annually. Well, that's because it's only valid for 1 year, okay. The license is issued by the planning staff after the home occupation has been determined to meet the requirements of this chapter. And that's 825, correct? That's our definition of a chapter is 825, with all its subheadings?
Yes.
Okay. Conditions may be attached to any license approval or renewal and are subject to annual review. Okay, approvals in any year do not perpetuate the right to operate such uses in subsequent years. New license applications and renewals shall comply with the requirements that are in effect at the time of application. So if the rules change during the year, you will not get your next year's application approved. Is that what we're saying?
I don't know. What does it say? There's a
Well, I'm
definition.
asking if there's,
So is it a continued use?
No.
If you've got a home occupation that was
It just-
able to do, and we change the rules halfway and now suddenly there's, is that
yeah,
a
that's what this
continued?
says.
No, it says the opposite.
No,
It says that if you change the rules in mid-year, you still get to have that remaining part of the year because it was in effect at the time of application.
But the next year,
The next year, it's a new application
right?
And you have
So
to
your renewal
re-comply.
has to comply with the requirements of that year.
at the new time, at that time of renewal.
What would cause, can we talk?
You bet.
Please do.
What would cause the change halfway through the year?
Somebody pissed themselves.
One of these meetings?
Yeah,
Yeah. If the council got together, I mean, if they looked at this and were like, look, 825, 26Q, we don't like that anymore because it's allowing people to, land airplanes in my backyard. I'm just out there. That kind of thing could happen mid-year.
I don't think we should make it so easily changeable. We're gonna be here every month for the rest of our lives.
Yep.
every year.
Thanks for that
But,
outlook.
no, the thing I can tell you though is code change does not happen simply. Code change would require a public meeting, it would require a meeting of all the people, it would require something really serious. All this says is just because I give you a permit this year to operate your business, does not mean that that guarantees you that business for the rest of your life.
So if we were to change code, we'd go through the same process, we'd have the public hearing.
It would take a year.
Do the whole thing again. The problem, well, it's not a problem, this is the way it's set up like this, is when a new city council or mayor gets in and directions change in the town, that they're able to change code.
And that gives the
So-
public the right to have input, and it gives them a chance to,
So
change
this
their
whole
city council
process
if they're
would
not
happen
like.
again at
Yeah.
that point in time.
And if they didn't have that ability, we'd been stuck with the first code that was ever made. So
I think that's just how it is. I don't
It
think
is.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I was gonna
Right.
propose we start out early with an easier definition of annual, which I think we can
Yes.
define, but is that 365 days from when you get your permit, or is that January 1st every year?
It says occupation license is valid for 1 year. So by
How
that
the
definition,
renewals
it's the
work,
year
isn't
from
it?
when you got
From when
it.
you pay your money?
I was
Yeah.
hoping to get one definition out there that we could do really quick, is that's 1 year from the date you got it?
Yes.
Or,
Yes,
That's-
it is.
To me, that's what this is.
So we
What
need
date
to
of
define
issue?
it better, is what the,
Yes, it should say date of issue.
so,
yes.
so
Yes.
we have one and we defined it and we
But
moved.
why does it say and can be renewed annually? What does that mean to anybody?
Yeah, why is that even on?
Doesn't-
It should be
it's
renewed.
redundant.
If anything, it should say it must,
Yeah,
must be.
Well, I think that says it can be renewed instead of a new application each year. Are we looking at a new application each year, or are we gonna renew them?
okay, so that's what this is.
That's what I read it as.
Okay.
It
I
can be
see that.
renewed, or
I-
we have to, or you have to come in every year and submit an application for
See,
renewal.
I thought they were gonna be automatically renewed.
Yeah,
Unless there was a complaint.
right.
That was the way we had it worked.
But don't they still have to pay?
Yeah. Well, hell no.
Yeah.
Not that much.
I think it's fine.
Yes, they have to pay.
What if instead of saying can be renewed annually, we say can be renewed at the date of issue? You know,
It should be the same.
Following
Why don't
year,
we
the
change
date
it
of
the same
issue.
way it's written on the other one?
Well, and that was another thing, on the other one, we put it every 2 years.
It's a 2-year period, so that you guys don't have to renew it. So, in other words, it
We
cuts the.
send 2 years to the to the town council, they will have to chew over 2 years.
No, they
because
already
they've
did,
chewed over
they
one.
already did, we already.
Only
They agreed.
825 shows that. If you look at 825A amendment, it says biennial.
Oh, well, let's fix this then it shouldn't be in the approval period. So it's valid for 2 years?
That's what it says. They should probably say the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's really not definition, but, okay, let's change it.
Read this one, Jane. Read that out loud.
Okay, 825-8, approval period under the amendment A.
Under Amendment A,
Yeah, approval period. Home occupation permit shall be issued by the planning staff for a 2-year period, only after the home occupation has been determined to meet the requirements of this chapter. Zoning changes shall not infringe on existing uses. When the use is allowed to lapse by the property owner, the allowed use can change.
Where are you at, Jay?
825-8.
The
under-
amendment.
It's on
Amendment A.
Amendment A.
yeah.
I think they should say the same thing,
I agree.
either a year or 2 years
I think
at the start of the permit, not like January 1.
Pay twice as much and go 2 years.
Okay, so what we're doing
So you
is
don't have
we're
to review them.
validating, changing from 1 to 2 years.
Well, you're not gonna review them unless there's a complaint anyway.
Okay, all right.
Oh, we're gonna
Probably
put this one
not.
out. Oh, this one, aren't we?
So we're at 2 years or 1 year?
or 2 years, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I.
Well, this one's 2 years, but the other one's
Yeah, we're
1 year.
We're changing it.
Changing it to 2, so we think 2's
825.02,
best.
approval
That's
period,
everything
we're
you
changing
follow.
it to 2 years.
Are we changing it to read the same as 82508 on Amendment A?
I think the 2-year thing, I don't know that they wrote the whole thing over there.
Yeah, no.
I think we should say the same thing. Why does it have to say different things?
So
Words
this
would be
can
the
be
same.
renewed annually.
Yeah, that's
Um,
correct.
You wouldn't do that if it was a 2-year
Yeah.
permit.
And it almost, I understand how you're hearing it and why it, but to me, it should almost. That it does not require a new application.
If you put 2 years in there and you've got can be renewed annually, I think that's a conflict.
Well, yeah, I can't say annually. I would have to say biannually, but this whole can be renewed to me doesn't, it doesn't
Doesn't make any
mean
sense.
what we're wanting it to mean.
Well, I
What we
think
want
it-
to say is that it
Wait a
can be
minute.
renewed and does not require a new application.
Where are we reading that at?
82502.
Okay,
Can't we just put that in there?
we're at halfway down?
No, right in the first
Very
sentence.
first sentence.
We've got a home occupation license is valid and is now corrected for 2 years and can be renewed. We would say biannually, but to me, it should indicate that what we're saying is it does not require a new application after 2 years.
I think the other part to that is it's saying that you can't let it lapse. If I have an application for 2 years and I wait 2 years, I can't renew it. So I think what
You
that
can
was
renew it.
intended to say is if you want to renew it, you need to keep it, you need to keep it valid.
Okay.
Continuous.
All right, then it should say that.
I'm not saying it
No,
does,
no.
I'm just, I think
I
that was
agree.
the intent, was
Yeah, the intent was that.
to not let it lapse is why that sentence.
Can't renew it for 2 years.
And I don't
take a
disagree, it
year
doesn't
off.
say that, but
Okay,
I
so
think
it
that
should
was.
say something like, and can be renewed, does not require a new application, can be renewed if renewed within that time period. If renewed within 2 years, it does not require a new application.
What if we give them a time limit?
So can it say can be renewed biannually prior to expiration?
I like that. If renewed prior to expiration.
Now, the state on my nail license was a 2-year license. And I had 30 days after it expired to renew it, or I had to complete the application all over again.
Yeah, they have a grace period there. in
So I
case
Yeah,
think
something-
in a
grace
case like
periods.
this,
There's an
That's a good
expiration
idea.
date.
Well, one thing that's been happening with business licenses, the city sends out an application every year to renew it.
Yes.
Anyway, I don't know if it's not really spelled out in here either, if it needs to be, if we're gonna get technical.
That sure would be bad. That'd be nice if you guys could do that. That would be bad to miss it by a day or two.
Yeah, it would be. And that's a problem, if I get an application, I mean, the 30 days kinda, we could get an application right after we've set the agenda. They wouldn't have got it in time to set the first of the month, yet we have a 30-day lay time. So the 30 days isn't a big issue to me, to have that, in case something goes wrong, things go wrong.
So what do you want to put within 30 days of the expiration date?
I don't even think that needs to be in there, I just think that we know that there's gonna be a 30-day grace period,
So it's just understood.
yeah.
Okay, your only problem with that is if you get real interesting character as your mayor or as your planner who doesn't like the guy and is like, you missed it.
Well, then it doesn't
That's
matter.
why there's a whole council.
That's why there's 7 members here.
Okay, all right.
And 5 there.
To
I could
straighten
live
them
with
out.
that. Okay.
Or do you say submitted, so that I turned it in tonight, I'm on time, but we're not gonna hear it till January, but, you know, anyway, that would also cover these delays, but
Prior to expiration, you wanna say,
I don't think we need it, I think we're getting into
nitty-gritty?
layers and layers and layers of it again.
That's true, because the idea here is to make people conform, so if they are,
Yeah, if there's no complaints, it's not an issue, right?
that's true.
You gonna put biannually then, since it's 2 years?
Biannually.
Yeah.
2 years.
Biannually prior to expiration is what I have, is that?
Oh, I
So,
like that, prior to expiration.
because those notices go out, what, 30 days before it expires? I'm unsure when they go out. Kathy Jo sends them out. Okay, well, we'll just work on our end on making sure that those get sent out, because like you said.
Did you
You
get
hate to
that,
miss it.
Carrie? Carrie,
Huh?
did you get that, what we
Yep,
finally got?
biannually and prior to expiration.
Okay. Oh, good news, we made it through the first sentence,
Woo, woo.
2502.
We like the whole thing
Smoking
other
it.
than that. So you wanna read 2503?
Well, the license is issued by planning staff, which it is, but it seems to me that that's not saying that they're gonna go in front of the council.
And are they?
I believe that they come with a recommendation from planning to council. I believe
Oh,
that's,
not in here, don't
and I think that's the path we do on everything, right? For
Mhm.
recommendation,
Yeah.
we send it to council. And that's what I'm saying, it doesn't really say that in there, it says planning staff. So if somebody comes and then they're reading this, they get done here, they think they're done. Where's my certificate? Well, you never showed up at the council meeting.
they? So it should say the license is issued by town council after approval by the planning staff, or after planning staff has determined
I think it ought to say just by the town council.
Okay. Well, it has to say after it's been determined to meet their
So
requirements.
submitted to the planning staff and approved by the town council.
Yes.
What's that?
Be approved by planning staff and town council.
Well, it would be a recommendation from this board to the council.
So the
Issued by the town
license is
council after
recommended?
recommendation by planning staff? After review
Yeah, you can say-
requirements by planning staff?
Yeah, we can put that. That's issued by town council upon recommendation,
It's by planning staff, or planning
planning commission.
commission.
Because I don't
So
think
we're-
staff, we're not gonna recommend anything. As staff, we're not gonna do that. You guys have to do that.
Is a license issued by staff after directed by the, after the council directs them to do so?
After having been approved and recommended by,
Okay, so what's that sentence now gonna say?
Eric's got it.
I do.
You do.
The license,
Issued by the town council.
town council,
Is issued by the town
The
council?
license is issued by the town council after recommendation from the planning commission. Or,
Yeah,
That sounds good.
yeah.
Well done.
After recommendation by the planning commission.
Well, we got two sentences now.
woo-hoo.
Yeah.
Halfway now, we're zooming.
We're gonna be done by two.
Does that just become a sentence? Because what are you gonna do with all that has been determined to meet the requirements of this chapter?
Yep.
So the license is issued by the town council after
recommendation from planning, right?
planning commission,
Period.
period.
And-
Planning,
And has been,
Oh,
and
determined to
has
meet.
been, okay.
and has been determined.
determined to meet the requirements for this
And
chapter.
has been determined.
This is terrible. We're not getting definitions. We're changing sentences.
Oh, no, we're not
Oh,
doing
yeah.
that. We're just beating this dead dog some more.
They should never have
Our
said that.
definitions have gone right.
Hey, we got one, we got annual, but yeah, other than that, we've reviewed two sentences and we've changed both.
It just, it's outgrown committee. It needs to go to one smart person.
Is that a volunteer?
It is that
No.
one, it is that one smart
It's good
person,
to
our
be
attorney's
king, isn't it?
reviewing
It's
it.
good to be king. Queen.
Oh, that could be bad.
It certainly will be.
So did we tie that in, Carrie?
Yep,
Did you get that, Carrie? How's that read now?
the license
The license
is,
is issued by the town council after recommendation from the planning commission and has been determined to meet the requirements of this chapter.
yes.
Is that full good?
That's good.
Needs no definition?
It works.
Awesome.
That sounded like a definition.
Thank you.
Sentence number 3,
Need to change annual to biannual at the very end of the sentence before review.
Well, hold on. If I get a, prior to us changing that, if I get a complaint, I think we need to have the ability to review that. I don't think we need to wait till 2 years to review that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so if we have something that's an issue, I think it may be one of the conditions we put on that it's reviewed annually. There may be something that we do want to see every year.
So conditions may be attached to any license approval or renewal and are subject, could you say and may be subject to annual review? Or do you like that
Yeah,
on?
we can put May. I like
So
that.
you don't have to review everything.
No, you
every
don't
Right.
year.
have to.
Yeah,
But it should be subject to any review after a
Yeah.
complaint.
Yeah,
yeah,
If
it
there's a
is.
complaint, no matter when it
I
happens.
would
that should
take
happen
annual
right
out of there,
now.
subject to review,
Yeah.
And
any
may be
complaint.
subject to review.
at any time, if you want to
At
put it
any
that
You
way.
can just put may be subject to review and then
And
that says
maybe,
anytime.
yeah, and maybe subject,
Like that.
well,
You guys can make it monthly at that point.
well, at that point, we
Daily.
could go back to R.
Okay, so we're taking and out of that next sentence?
No.
No.
Conditions may be attached to any license approval or renewal and may be subject to review.
I think if you flip it back over to 825.05, it kind of talks about that annual review and review of home occupation license. It covers that already.
Where you at?
Turn the page over, whatever you just gave us, and you go to 8,
So all we're doing is making this one agree with that one.
annual review and review of home occupation license.
Yeah, so we're making 82502 agree with 05.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Okay,
So,
Yeah,
so
that covers it.
Okay.
conditions may be attached to any license approval or renewal and may be subject to
Review.
review.
Yeah, you just drop annual.
Okay.
So that next sentence, approvals in any year do not perpetuate the right to operate such uses in subsequent years. You got any heartburn there?
No, I don't.
Heartburn? Okay. New license applications and renewals shall comply with the requirements that are in effect at the time of application.
Okay.
Well, it means if we change it and you decide you want a new application.
You can do that.
And so, okay, so it also covers the fact that if I had an application, I let it lapse, then I come back with a new license application.
New
I do
rules.
not
Yeah.
get to go under what I had before if we've changed the requirements. I have to go with the new one.
It also means that if something's changed during that time period, it could go away completely, whether you do anything wrong or not. We could just say, we're no longer going to allow this, and when your license runs out, that's the end of it.
I kind of have a problem with approval in 1 year and doesn't perpetuate the right to operate use, operate such use in subsequent years, because, a person could have their livelihood totally changed from year to year
Yeah,
by
Other
By
people,
code.
by somebody
Yep.
saying that's different. I think that's, gone with continued uses
which is why you want to keep your
for
license
years
up.
and years.
And that's why it says it would have to be,
no.
nope, you're right, a renewal
What
doesn't.
he's saying is,
The renewal will give that council a right to shut me down.
they could come down and say, no more trucking, period.
Your
and he's
license
done.
isn't under that one anyway.
Well, they
This one-
could.
This one is different.
They absolutely could.
But still, it doesn't matter if it's my license or somebody else's. If I was a business owner and built a business at my home and decided, somebody decided they don't like it there,
Well, it
and
wouldn't
it
be
was
some,
approved beforehand,
it wouldn't be somebody, it would be this process. It would be this
I think
entire
the town
1 year
needs-
process.
I think the town needs that in there for protection myself.
Yeah, I think that's how,
it already has all those protections.
It does until you get the attorneys involved.
Well,
Well, that's gonna be that way no matter.
it sounds to me like that just gives you guys the choice to change it without, say, hey, this business isn't allowed anymore.
Wouldn't
It's
it
allowed
That's
before.
exactly what it says.
Rule that?
I think that this is speaking to home occupation, if it's in there, it wouldn't overrule
This code would overrule a continued use that way?
that. Yeah.
Say that again, Eric, I didn't
I
understand.
believe that this home occupation code would overrule a continued use. If we said it's not allowed in the next time, then it wouldn't be allowed as a continued use because it's stated in here that it doesn't.
So it gives the planning commission and the town council the ability to shut something down just by saying, we're no longer gonna have this.
It gives the town council that,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
Do we want that?
Yes.
Do you want your town council to be able to, well, they'll just change this if they don't like that. They can put in
Do you want that? Are you saying the opposite? You don't want that in there?
I don't want that.
he thinks it's precarious.
I think it should be like
And capricious.
82508 on the office and business. That's what we discussed ad infinitum for over a year.
Yeah, see the second one there, zoning changes shall not infringe on existing uses.
Where's that, Eric?
82508,
Okay.
Meaning you can't build the
So the meaning being, if there has been no complaints against said business, then it would be renewed.
That's what we said all along.
Yeah, that's what we were.
So why are we working off of this one instead of the Amendment A? I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I'm not sure. This was for the small business in the home, right?
Yeah, this is all contained within the home.
So this was a different deal, and we never really hashed this one out. In fact, I don't remember.
Yeah, we hashed this one out, and then we said, we have to come back and visit this if this one doesn't go through.
Okay.
So that was where Amendment A came from, because this one doesn't allow what Amendment A does.
So will Amendment A erase this one?
No, that still will apply to home occupation within the home.
And
This
is
one,
one,
this is one that has
As a
a,
new code,
Well-
actually, we didn't have it.
yeah, that's
We
correct.
added more opportunities to have businesses in
Yeah,
the
that's why
town.
the Amendment A is what we looked at. And if, that's what we said, if Amendment A doesn't go, then we need to revisit this, home occupation, because we're trying to fold that into the same, so. We have some daycares that fully will fit within this.
right,
I mean, it's not
or
gonna,
nails, or.
right, and they won't be under Amendment A because
Or
they're not,
accountants.
there's a less
Outside
of
the
an
home.
impact, I should say, less of an impact. I believe what the legislature did, if you fall under this first code, you are not gonna be required to pay a licensing fee.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just because of the low impact of the town. They're gonna take away that fee. So, at some point, the town council and planning, we're gonna have to decide if we even license a home occupation. Because now all of a sudden you're incurring costs without any, there's no way to recoup the costs. Which, anybody's been watching this as it goes through, there's three cities on the Wasatch Front that said we no longer regulate, you guys have fun. Because the legislature took that away from them. They're not gonna go license all them and put out all that money and not be able to collect, so they just don't license.
Interesting.
So,
That won't last very long. It won't.
we'll see,
Yeah, we will see.
the legislature's done some.
Well, they've made mistakes before.
Yeah, they correct them every year, just like we are, ain't it?
Well,
And they have lawyers.
Eric, I think Mark brings up a valid point that we either address this and say that we have the power to take that away, or we say that we are representatives of the community and we should be responsive to what the citizens say. And I think that it becomes different than just what our own board members' personal thoughts are. And I think we have a citizen who's expressing something, and I think that we ought to address it. I don't know whether we should approve it or whether we should stick with this, but I think that he brings up a valid point, that if we have this, that we now have the ability to just take a sweeping move and take something away from businesses. And I think we need to address that here tonight and not just let it get passed and say, well, that's just too bad, that's the way it's gonna be, because that's the way it's printed. I think it's a valid point, and I think we ought to make a determination.
Well, and that's Kim and I are looking at this, and we're saying that's what we want.
Well,
I want to be
okay.
able to say, I mean, if there's been a complaint and if there's a review.
Right, and
if
that's what this says, is that it is complaint driven, that if like
Right, and so. the
like
only
Brent
way-
says, is that if it comes through the time period and there have been no complaints, should we as the planning commission or the town council have the right to take somebody's business away from them just because we're gonna change that? I don't know.
We can if they don't comply. Now, what I'm saying here is this new license applications and renewals shall comply with the requirements that are in effect at the time of application.
And
The
how
only
did,
time those requirements would change.
how do the two of you feel about that?
I feel like this home occupation thing, based on what he said, should be thrown in the trash, and this thing should cover everything, the way it's written. And we define
Okay, the difference between the two of them there, the one that you want is Amendment A,
Amendment A.
and that this one should be thrown in the trash.
Well, based on what he's saying, is that we can't enforce it anyway.
No, you can enforce it, you can't charge for it.
Can't charge them.
Oh, you can't charge them.
There's
Just like
no-
agriculture.
Oh,
You
okay.
cannot charge for it.
Okay.
And your viewpoint, Mark?
Because we're not
I
saying,
think that, the approvals in any year do not perpetuate the right to operate such use in subsequent years It should have something like, after review, it does not.
Well, and
We
that-
can't renew it or.
Right, and all that says is that it does not mean that if I approved you this year, that I, meaning the town approves you this year. That doesn't mean that you can just continue to